Inclusive education requires universities to understand and respond to diverse student cohorts. Today I'm going to discuss my recent work on student perspectives on choice and expectation of postgraduate research projects. Within postgraduate taught programmes, dissertation projects are a critical component of learning and skill development. On our Healthcare Science MSc programme, the dissertation period runs from May until early August. Prospective supervisors from across biomedical and life sciences provide project proposals. Last year there were over 150 of these. The students and those from other life science PGTs are sent this list and are asked to choose their top 6. From these choices, students are allocated to projects, with most being allocated to one of those top 6. There are 3 main types of project. Laboratory-based investigative projects are the typical lab projects you might expect, usually within established research groups. Non-lab based projects are usually data analysis rather than wet lab, and the dissertations projects are those systematic reviews. Our teaching team are all learning, teaching and scholarship track staff, so I was interested in how we can provide dissertation projects that are high quality and equivalent to those in research groups, and that are also interesting and relevant to our students. Our cohort typically has a high proportion of international students, and many of our students are interested in working in the NHS setting. I wanted to know what are the factors influencing student choices and what are their expectations of these projects. 21 students from last year completed an online survey after they had made their choices and their projects had just begun. The questions were multiple choice and there were free text boxes for additional comments. Some participants opted not to answer some of the questions. So students had 1 week to look at the project proposals. They were sent the list of all the proposals and they were to select their top 6. It was reassuring that many students found there were enough projects that interested them. However, when I asked about the information provided in the project proposals, only 25% said there was sufficient information provided to make their decisions, with over 50% saying there was insufficient or variable levels of information. This limitation in the process was illustrated by a couple of comments from students who said their projects were not as expected. One because the proposal was not fully informative, and one because the information was out of date. Most students chose lab-based projects, although there were more of those on offer, and the majority considered the disadvantages as well as the advantages of the different types. The most popular answers when asked about influencing factors were the topic or subject and the methods. For many students, general laboratory work experience was a factor, and many were thinking about a future career. I also asked them to indicate the most important reason to them, and the same 4 factors came out on top. Students indicated that often there are many factors involved in these decisions, such as this student who commented that they were thinking about alignment of the project topic with the type of research they wanted to do in future. Some also wanted to enjoy the dissertation experience itself, as shown by this student who said that although some of the topics, dissertation topics were interesting, they didn't want to spend 3 months just reading papers and writing. Factors less frequently chosen was the desire to work in a particular setting, either research or healthcare, or to work with a particular supervisor. This might reflect that although students are thinking about future careers, many of them are still undecided, as shown by this student who said they were using the project to gain insight about a particular field. Lastly, in project choices, there were 2 areas that were a little bit unexpected. Practical details. 2 students said flexible working options was an important factor, and 2 made comments to say that the location of the project was important. Our teaching is at the QE hospital site, so a few students were surprised that the projects might be located at the Glasgow complex. Secondly, student personality factors. One student was put off when the topic was very unfamiliar to them, and one was thinking about the style of project and how it suited how they worked best. And the project proposals often did not contain this type of information. On expectations, students expected to spend up to 5 days a week working on the project. A large majority expected to be in the workplace during the working day. However, most also expected flexibility in their start and finishing times, and around half expected their own desk or workspace, and some expected the ability to work from home. One student commented that the requirement to be working 5 days a week is difficult for people who work part-time. Most students expected to develop skills, and the most frequent responses were for academic writing, problem solving, and time management, although many students selected all of the skills suggested. A few additional comments illustrated that they were also expecting to enjoy the project. So, conclusions on this: the project choices students reported making complex decisions influenced by several factors. Flexible working options, the locations of the projects, and student factors were less common but were important to a few of them. On project expectations, students understood they should be working around 5 days a week, but expected some flexibility, and they expected to develop several skills. The areas highlighted here led me to ask, are we respecting students as individuals here? And are we providing inclusive projects? I know that supervisors can be flexible. They can work around part-time jobs, they will support students with diverse learning needs. However, this information is not in the project proposals that the students see. These questions led to a co-creation project aiming to improve on the current project proposal information. 4 students were recruited from the current cohort, so they have yet to go through the project selection process themselves. They were asked about what information they would want to know to make their choices, and they were also sent examples of project proposals from last year. We then met for an in-depth conversation about what they expected and wanted personally, as well as wider issues for their class cohort. As a result, we agreed some recommendations. So here is an example of the current proposal structure. It contains some standard information at the top, then there is a summary box, and then 3 boxes labelled methods, keywords and techniques. In those boxes, the student observed that they are used inconsistently, sometimes they're not used at all. And the summary box did contain the most information, but it was also inconsistent and sometimes and often did not contain information they thought would be important for them. Here are some of the recommendations we come up with. For the selection process generally, we are recommending that it should be made clear that no previous expertise is necessary, as full training will be provided. Students need adequate time to evaluate the proposals and make informed selection, and we thought around 2 weeks was reasonable for this. We also thought that the supervisor should be available during that time to answer questions, and if not, then a second name contact should be available. For the proposals themselves, the project description should be up to date and accurate, and there should be a clear description of the main tasks of the project. Key sources are useful, but supervisors should consider using informative and accessible sources, such as a website or a review paper, rather than very detailed technical papers. Practical details such as location, requirements to be on site, and the possibility of flexible working should be explicitly stated. There should be more consistent use of the methods, keywords and techniques boxes, because students found them useful for filtering the long lists of projects to find ones which interested them. The dissertation is a key milestone of the PGT, and students want to develop transferable skills and explore future career possibilities. Students are making their choices based on several factors and should be provided with enough time and relevant information to make those choices, especially since in this context they are not usually part of the project design. Student cohorts are diverse and typically include international students, but also students who work part-time or have caring responsibilities, and or those with disabilities. Students reported being put off when flexibility or possibilities were not explicit. These recommendations should go some way towards making the project choice process more informative, inclusive, and accessible for our diverse student cohort. These are my references. Thank you to my colleague Leah Martin, my student volunteers, and the various people that I have received information and training on this over the last couple of years. I will be available to answer questions. Thank you for listening.